The belief from psychology is that it will treat even the potential of embarrassment or the potential of humiliation, it'll treat that as if it's something that's going to eat us.
What if your biggest limitations aren't real? Just old beliefs your mind never updated. That's the core of today's conversation with hypnotist Steve Woods. We break down how hypnosis actually enhances performance in sport, business, and day-to-day life by changing the beliefs that hold you back. Steve opens up about his own leap from retail into hypnosis, the fear that came with it, and how imposter syndrome follows you no matter how much you achieve. We dig into visualization, positive thinking, and the practical side of breaking negative patterns and building new ones. We also cover self-hypnosis, mindfulness, emotional awareness, and how music and media quietly shape the subconscious. If you found value in this one, support the mission. Please kindly subscribe and leave a review. It helps the show grow, and it means that we can reach more men who are looking to take that next step in their journey. Thank you so much. I'm Harrison, and this is the Growth Voyage podcast. Enjoy. Okay, we're live. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me along, Harrison. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And I'm excited to get into this. For those who don't know you, what do you do? How do you help people? And I'm also interested to hear about how you got into it as well.
Okay, that's totally fine. Yeah. So, well, I'm Steve Woods. I am a hypnotist. I've been hypnotizing people for over 20 years now, longer than that, really. But I sort of count 20 years as being 21 years, I think it is to be precise, from when I got my first proper qualifications. How do I help people? I help people by changing beliefs, really. Hypnosis is quite a complex subject. I enjoy performance work. That's not me performing on stage. Stage hypnosis is another side of things, but not for me. But helping people perform better in sports, in business, in life. And I think really even the therapeutic side of hypnosis is very much about performance. It's still very much about, if somebody gets better sleep, then they're going to perform better in their job or perform better in life as well. So those are that's what I do basically, and do to mine all around the world. What was the other part? There was three parts to that question. I can't remember the last bit.
Well, I'm intrigued to hear how you got into it. Was it, did you stumble upon it, or was there maybe an inner journey you went through and you found it was useful for yourself? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is quite common, I think, in a lot of therapies. I mingle with a lot of therapists, and they'll often say they use the therapy to help them. I did in a way, but not quite that way. So it's got to be 35 plus years ago. It was in the 80s. I was working in retail. Group of us, we went out for a night out in Doncaster, where I was living at the time and working at the time. And during that night out, we stumbled into a stage hypnotist show. I'd never seen anything like it before. A couple of guys went up and they were on stage and doing silly things and stuff. And we bought some self-hypnosis tapes from the guy, probably. And a few people asked me who it is, and I don't know who it was. And there's no internet records, of course, from back that time. So I'd have to go up to Doncaster and go through all the newspapers and hope that there was an advert or something. It does intrigue me sometimes to go and find out, but I'm not sure I'm that enthused to go and sit for a day in the library scrolling through all newspapers and things on the old microfiche systems. But yeah, we bought some self-hypnosis tapes. Back then, I think they were called Get Up and Go or something like that, whereas now we'd probably call it Resilience. And it made a bit of a difference, but it made more of a difference for some of my colleagues. And I could see different levels of the way it was making changes for people. And it was enough to get me interested in it. Bought some books, learned how to do a little bit myself from books, and then just played around with it until about 20 years ago. So it was using it a little bit, but it was more seeing how it changed other people and how their enthusiasm and resilience changed.
It just sounds like pure fascination. And it's kind of like that child within us. We're like, oh, this is cool. Let's explore that. And it's just awesome that you just happen to go to that. Who knows why, and all the pieces that brought that together. And that's led you to pretty much dedicate your life to this craft, which I find awesome.
Yeah,
Really
it's
cool.
crazy now. Things happen, whether it's fate, whatever it might be. But yeah, it's the route that I went down. But it did take me quite a long time to even get the proper qualifications. And it was literally one Friday I decided that not to give up the day job because I had quite an interesting day job, but I wanted to do this properly. And by the Sunday, I'd spent several £1,000s and was booked onto a residential course in Devon a few weeks after that. So it just all happened very quickly. It was literally just a Friday morning. Just want to do something about this.
Mm. Did you find that the eagerness, that voice to explore it, did you find that that got louder and louder and louder? Because I feel as though a lot of the time we can be quite set in our ways. And like you said, this is just a workplace scenario, but we can kind of enjoy it. You know, it's not okay. It might not light us up every single day, but yeah, we can tend. But then there's a small thing that starts boiling up, and we're like, oh, I'd really love to explore that. But I think a lot of the time we don't, or we delay that as much as
Mm.
possible for various
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a fear, isn't there? There's a fear of the unknown that's built into us. We don't want to be sticking our head above the parapet. We're at risk, so we follow along and we do our job. And also, I think certainly my age group, there was that. It was expected that you had a job. It wasn't expected to work for yourself as well. Whereas nowadays, kids are going out of school and college, and almost not necessarily, I think probably are actively encouraged, but it is okay to go straight into business. It's okay to become creative, to do something, which is brilliant. But yeah, back in, sounding really old now, back in my day, it wasn't the done thing. You went to work for somebody, you earned a wage, and that was either where you stayed or that route that you stayed in. Um, or you learnt enough to eventually take on doing something yourself, or you were really rubbish at what you were doing or didn't get on with your managers. So also you left to go and do something yourself. And mine was different, I suppose, in a way. And it took me a long time. I took it full time just over 8 years ago, about 8.5 years ago now, I took it full time. So it took a long time to go from that part-time role because again, I was enjoying the day job, the proper job, as my mum still calls it. I was enjoying that. It wasn't at that point, it wasn't even really a fear of it, but it was actually that I enjoyed it. So it's again different, but quite often it is a fear of the change. It's a fear of the unknown. It's the fear of that being exposed and being vulnerable by going. I'm working for myself now.
Yeah, and I can imagine in a way because there are perhaps less people doing it. You're alluding to the idea that it's against the norm. Perhaps that makes you stand out a bit more. And now
Mm,
I think it is great. I think there is a bit of a shift now, and people starting to question the status quo. I know there's a
mm,
lot of emphasis placed on personal branding, for example, and it's going to be fascinating now with AI. My prediction is quite optimistic, at least in the medium term, where people will be forced to look inwards and think, what do I actually want to do? And
mm.
nurture their creative sides as more and more jobs get perhaps displaced, replaced by AI, and as we shift into that new world. But I'm intrigued to hear about that element for you.
Yeah, it is quite interesting because you sort of triggered me then as you were saying that because I remember being at school, which is quite a long time ago now, and the careers people talking about very briefly. They talked about the future being leisure. The future is, actually, we won't need to have so many people working. Things will be automated, and actually, that your better positions, your better job would be in the leisure industry because people will have more leisure time. How that was going to work out financially for everybody, I don't know, and I still don't know how that would happen. But yeah, it's just something that resonated with me there as you were saying that, and I think you're right. You're right as well about that personal branding because it is a lot more of that now. So you're not working for a company, it's you are, and people want to get you as a person as well. That's really important, whether it's because of social media and all these things, and where we can see into all these people's lives. You can watch somebody on TV, and then we can go into their life and learn more about them, a lot more than we ever used to be able to. Some of it good, some of it bad, but that then reflects on all of us that we become that personal brand. People want to know us personally, particularly with what I'm doing, of course, as well, because I'm going into people's heads. Really, I'm going, getting, and you don't get any secrets or anything when you're hypnotizing somebody. You can't hypnotize somebody and pull out all their secrets, and they don't have to give you anything other than working on what they want to work on. But there is that perception of it. And so people do need to trust you and do need to get to know you as that person. I do a lot of networking, business networking online and in person. And sometimes it can take a year of somebody, they might mention little snippets of something they want to work on, but they don't do it for a long time because they want to really get to know you first and trust you.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely a long term game. And
I'm intrigued to hear about your journey within all of that too, because when you suddenly put yourself out there, we were having this discussion before we went live that, okay, because it's for our business, we're on social media, but at least for me, I'll be having a Nokia and doing my own thing and spend the whole time offline. So has there been like perhaps doubts come up along your journey and also relating back to your early experiences? Because like you were saying, you had a quote unquote proper job. It wasn't really the norm in society too. So even just pursuing that, did self-doubt arise? Did you always have a sense of self-belief when you were younger? And I imagine that's probably where hypnosis might tie into your own journey too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all get imposter syndrome. We all get that self doubt at some point, and even now, sometimes you wake up in the morning. I wake up in the morning and think, what am I doing? Where am I going with this? And it's built into us. Again, I touched on it earlier on. We are we're still. I think we're still sort of pack animals. Like we're conditioned to follow somebody or something, to be in the middle of the pack where we're safest. We don't want to be right at the back. So we don't want to be rejected, because then we're at risk of being picked off by a predator. But we also don't naturally want to be a leader for a lot of people, because again, you're now at the front and you're likely to run into trouble before anyone else does. So I think we're built in, it's built into us. So it takes quite a bit of mindset. And I've always been surprised along the way. I've met quite a lot of people who were mentors in a particular. I was in a particular big sort of accelerator type hub type thing. And even some of the mentors came and spoke to me and said, what can you do for imposter syndrome? So people who we look at, and they're all published authors and they're TEDx speakers and all these things, all of them at some point have that little bit of, do I deserve? Why am I here? What am I? Why is this here for me? Do I actually belong here? Do I deserve it? So I think we all get it, and I certainly get it. I do quite a lot of self hypnosis um, to help with that resilience, to help with that belief in things. And again, when you work for yourself, you've always got that. Or often, particularly when it's only yourself or maybe one other in the business, you do get that roller coaster of business, because you've got plenty of time to do some sales work, and whether we like it or not, we're all trying to sell what we're doing. And then you get you get your inquiries, you then convert them, and now you're busy with clients. So now you're not doing any sales work, and of course, then the sales work finishes, and you dips, and then it's a, why am I doing this type scenario in your head? So you've got to clear that, to deal with that block, and then get back on with things. And very much about. Well, always one of the things I work with other clients is the structure of things and clarity of things. So I do that myself as well.
Mm. It's a good point on the self-doubt that everyone seems to have it. I think we can get into this illusion sometimes that we think we're the only one navigating something like that and
Mm,
struggles. And it's why I started the podcast, because every guy I was speaking to was going for a challenge and they thought they were the only one. They thought they were behind. And I'm like, well, that can't be the case, because everyone's playing the same game. Everyone's thinking
yeah.
the same thing. And it reminds me, because I'm a pro wrestling fan, and I remember
Yeah.
hearing one of the greats, who was Randy Orton, and he was saying that he gets imposter syndrome, and I'm thinking that's wild to me. It's absolutely wild. It's like you're saying with the TEDx speakers as well. So that voice
Yeah.
obviously comes from somewhere, and that's tied into the work that you do, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And they're quite embarrassed by it. They don't want to admit it. It is that very quiet conversation, that sort of sidling up to you and having a very quiet conversation. And I don't think that's a good thing, really, because again, like you said, it's people then think it's only them. Whereas actually, if people were more open about it, and you had people who were in the public eye and they were then they were being vulnerable and going, actually, I feel this way sometimes. I think that would make a massive difference for the rest of us to be able to go, oh, okay, so they feel that way. So it's okay for me to feel that way. It's okay. And then they can talk about how they've solved it as well, of course, which then helps everybody find that solution.
100%. And especially in your profession, I see this with other coaches all the time, right? Because especially if you're a hypnotist, so there's this, you can kind of get into this imposter syndrome, which is, well, hang on, I'm meant to be in this profession where you've got a wicked mindset, and I've got self doubt. So then I think you can get into the cycle of, you're like, oh, am I meant to be doing what I'm doing? I'm supposed to have a rock solid mindset, and it's such an illusion, because I have some friends that might be anxiety coaches, and they'll experience anxiety or panic
Mhm.
attacks, and suddenly they're doubting themselves, even though their work is amazing and they've got
Yeah.
people great results. And I think what's helped me with that is because I'm my whole thing is coaching nice guys, right? With the nice guy syndrome, people
Mm,
pleasing. And what's helped me is acknowledging that, okay, if perhaps there is behavior that isn't aligned with your identity, that doesn't change your identity. It's just the behavior misalignment.
yeah.
So if you've already made the shift in your mind, okay, this isn't me, this is a limiting belief, and you might suddenly slip into behavioral misalignment, that doesn't dictate who you are. It doesn't mean you need to always go deeper and find out more answers. I imagine that's a common trap in the self-help world.
Yeah, it is, and I think again, you're right with what you're saying that we do get those things. Things happen to us. People, like you said, it's an anxiety coach suffering with anxiety. But of course, the more you try and if you try and fight that and go, well, I shouldn't be having those things, and that ingrains it even further as well and draws more attention to it. Whereas actually being open to it and going, okay, let's look at what's happening here and work our way through it, and not letting it change you, but you change it instead. Take control of it. I've always been, people have often described me as being quite realistic. I sometimes meet other therapists and you'll say, how are you getting on? I go, oh, everything's amazing. Everything I'm in. And I think, I'm not sure you really are. Is this in your real life? I wonder if you really are. Whereas I drive along and shout at other drivers if they cut me up and things. I don't have that. Oh, it's fine. And yeah, I get control of it pretty quickly because I've got those techniques. I do a lot of work in golf and I work with golfers. I work with golfers at all sorts of levels, but I don't play golf. And my son thrashes me at crazy golf, and he'll say to me, we're playing the crazy golf on holiday, and I was like, I thought you were a golf hypnotist, Dad. Yeah, but it doesn't mean I've got to be really good at it in order to be able to help other people with it. So it's been able to separate that because if I felt I'd got to be a really great golfer in order to work with other golfers, that would hold me back from being able to do it. And they're the experts. So again, it's that this thing could sometimes happen to me. Yes, I need to deal with it, but it doesn't stop me helping other people with it.
Mm. It's a conscious mindset shift. I think as long as you're aware of these voices happening and you're
Mm,
able to observe it, I think that's what makes a difference. And it was something that helped me along my journey was, okay, sometimes you're not going to be in a constant state of like healing or this idea that you have to fix yourself. It's just no, just the patterns might be there, but just observe them and then just come up with an action piece after. I think we tend to overcomplicate it sometimes, but I think even just having that awareness and an intention to act in alignment with the
yeah,
identity that you've set out for yourself, then
yeah.
I believe you're on the right path. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it can also stop you from helping other people. And I see this when I'm doing training and thing when I'm going on other people's training courses. I often meet people and I'll say, hey, and they'll go, I've been training for years. And so how many clients yet? I'm not seeing any clients yet. I'm not quite ready because they're trying to get, yes, they want to get all the experience and all the knowledge, which is great, but they're not actually doing anything because they're working on themselves as well. So it's holding them back from actually being out there, probably doing some really good work.
Well, the best quote I saw was that learning is an intelligent man's favorite form of procrastination.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that really rang true
Absolutely.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to get on and do it.
I'm intrigued to hear about the golfers that you work with too, because I remember when I was younger, my old man used to take me to have golf lessons, and I used to really struggle mentally because I felt like there was this pressure on me to perform. So he'd take me along. It'd be him, his usual golfing buddy. Sometimes there were more than one, and then I'd come as the son. And I remember my confidence was so low, and I had all this pressure when I go to swing the golf club. I'm like, don't miss the ball, don't miss the ball in front of all these
Yeah.
older guys, and it's a lot of pressure. And I can only imagine the higher level at which you perform at, it probably gets worse in that regard. So I imagine there's quite a lot of demand for what you're doing now because it is so focused.
Yeah, it is. It's a very, I mean, it's a very niche area. It's the niche area is double-sided because not many golfers know that they can use hypnosis. So I spend a lot of time educating, a lot of time doing group sessions and talks and demonstrations. But I've always done that anyway since first starting out. It was always my mission to get as many people as possible experiencing hypnosis. But golf on its own, aside from you've just said about the pressure, I mean, that's going to put lots of pressure anyway. But aside from that, golf on its own is one of those sports where you've got to initiate the process. You've got to start the process. And also things aren't, although the scores are influenced by other people, somebody else isn't going to come along and move your ball nearer or further away. You're not playing against somebody in that form, a physical way. So everything is down to you. And there is lots of time to think. There's like you exactly what you said. You don't miss the ball, don't miss the ball. And I was at a sporting dinner thing a while ago, a charity thing, and sat next to a golfer, and he said to me, he said, "Oh, he said, what can I?" He said, "When I stand on the tee, he says it always goes right. Always, whatever I do, technique wise, it always goes to the right." And I said, "Well, what are you thinking about?" He said, "I stand there." He says, "I try as hard as possible not to go right." I say, "Don't go right, don't go right, don't go right." And of course, in order to try not to do something, you've got to think about it. And I always talk about, child, if you've got a child carrying a glass of water or a cup of water and you say, don't spill the water, don't spill the water. In their head, they're going to think about spilling it in order to try, what does spilling look like in order to try not to spill it? And that thinking about it is more powerful than the trying not to do it. And when we try to do something as well, it also implies almost failure because we're trying rather than doing. So yeah, golf is one of those where it's so easy to talk yourself out of making a great shot because you're tense. And of course, then you get the physical reaction as well. So if you're tense, if you're having that fear feeling, that fight or flight feeling, actually then you can't swing the golf club because you've got to be able to swing really freely and easily to get the speed and the momentum through the ball and not try and hit the ball, it's swinging through it. So there's loads going on in golf. And I think, I like I said, I don't play golf, but I have an understanding of golf. I needed to get an understanding of golf. And it was literally being introduced to a golfer 8, 9 years ago who was about to give up the game. They'd spent thousands on their kit. It was their life. And they'd got this golf affliction. And he said to me, he was captain of his club. And he said, people won't play golf with me because they don't want to catch this thing. They don't want to see me do this thing because they believe that then they'll do it. And it's in the golf world, it's called the shanks, and it's where the ball comes off basically the shank of the club. And it can be quite dangerous because it can fly off at really cute angles at quite high speed, not in the direction at all. So it's quite a nasty thing to have. But from his point of view and from golfers in general, their belief was that they could catch it. If they saw it, if they stand there and think about, don't do that thing he's just done, they're going to do it. And so as a hypnotist, that was like music to my ears going, well, if that's the way it works, then we can take that out. We can change it and put some better stuff in place to change that way of thinking and to remove it. And sure enough, going down to single handicap figures and he's still doing really well. I saw him last year at an event and doing really well. So yeah, there are other sports as well. Darts is another sport where you've got to start the process. You've got to stand there and throw and release a dart. And dart players get an affliction with dartitis, I think they call it, where they can't release the dart on time. So they're already sort of on the downstroke of the hand before they're releasing it. Again, because they've got to commit to doing it themselves. If somebody's sending a ball towards you, kicking a ball or throwing a ball or hitting a ball to you, and you've got to hit it back, it's very different because you've got to respond, you've got to react to it. And that's where the unconscious mind kicks in. Whereas if I'm overthinking, I'm at the conscious part of the mind, and that's the slower part of the mind. Like I say, it's the overthinking part of the mind. If you challenged a golfer to, and a lot of golf coaches will talk about this, they stood at the edge of the golf green, they can see the hole. Somebody throws them a golf ball and says, right, you've got to get rid of it. Pretend it's a hand grenade. You've got to get rid of it in 1 second or half a second or whatever. They throw it pretty close to the hole because they're using the subconscious rather than standing there and going, okay, so if I do this and if I think about this muscle and I think about this position and then I'm going to throw it, no, you're not going to get it then.
Mm, that really resonates because it kind of accessing a flow state. You're not thinking too much about it. You're kind of just
Yeah.
doing the thing. And again, relates back because I used to be a goalkeeper and play football. And the
Okay.
more I thought about, okay, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to save it, not making a mistake, that would be at the forefront of my mind. So it's not the most optimal way to go into a game. I'd go in, I think, right, I'm not going to make a mistake today. Whereas really what you're alluding to is the mindset of perhaps it's just embodying that I'm going to have a great game today. And then almost, I wonder if visualization's a big part of the process for you, but I know it's tied in with a lot of different areas. So I know it's okay, if you focus on the thing that you don't have, then you're going to keep on having more or not having more of that thing in your life. So whatever you focus on grows.
Mm.
Is that sort of a big part of the process then, kind of replacing that fear or that lack mentality with, okay, how am I going to show up? Is there a lot of
Yeah.
visualization?
Yeah, massively. So we're basically rehearsing success in hypnosis. So at a conscious level, if you said to somebody, well, just imagine it going really well and you'll be fine, the conscious level it filters it. It's a bit like, in computer terms, it's the old, we don't hear the phrase very often now, but a few years ago, it was all about the firewall. When something didn't work, your firewall must be blocking it. Conscious mind is a bit like a firewall. It only lets certain things through. Um, the aim is to get that conscious mind out of the way because the subconscious accepts whatever gets to it. And then in normal circumstances, so back to, if we think about golf again, the golfer's got that fifth hole in the game, they always end up in the water. They're going to be thinking about that from hole 2, 3, 4. They're thinking about, it's hole 5 again, I'm going to end up in the water. Don't end up in the water. Because what's happening is the subconscious mind runs these protection scenarios all the time. Whatever we're doing, even you and me sitting here now, somewhere in the background it's going, what if this happens? What if there's a power cut? What if, what do I do? And in most cases, it doesn't need to do anything. It's that part of the mind where if you're walking along the road and you're probably looking at your phone, back to your phones, looking at your Nokia, and you're walking along the road, and you go to cross the road and a car sounds its horn, you don't look around and go, is that car sounding its horn at me? You just immediately step back. That's the protection part of the mind. So it can be physical, but the belief from psychology is that it will treat even the potential of embarrassment or the potential of humiliation, it will treat that as if it's something that's going to eat us. So the golfer who is now fearing what his friends are going to say or her friends are going to say, that they're going to laugh at them because they might, if they do this thing, now the mind is going, right, you need to run away then because this is dangerous. You can end up getting killed here on the golf course. Something's going to come along and eat you. Some golf courses in the world, they do have things that will pop along and eat you, crocodiles and things, but for most places not. But it puts you in fight or flight, creates tension, creates anxiety. We don't really know that we're in fight or flight. It's just a feeling. It's a pit of the stomach churning at first. But of course, we battle through it. It keeps trying, keeps going. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. A good example of this, hopefully we've got time for this, is and it wasn't myself that worked with this person, but it was something I read about. A lady who developed a fear of going to the supermarket. And I know it's not the best experience in the world going to the supermarket. It's pretty mundane. But she got to a point where she just couldn't even drive into the car park of a supermarket. Um, and I'm not a big fan of going back and looking at why, because I don't think you always need to know why. Sometimes it's useful, but in most cases, you don't need to go back. You don't need to unravel it all, as a lot of work would be. I'm more about, okay, we've got that. Something's protecting you, overprotecting you. Let's put some new memories in there so that when the mind goes, is this safe? Oh yeah, last time I did this, it went great. So I'm not a big fan of that. But this particular therapist did go back, and I get it because sometimes it's fascinating. Why would you have a fear of the supermarket? And I went back to a point where she was waiting to pay in the queue at the till, and her subconscious heard a phrase or a word or a tone of voice. It was something like that took her back to being at school, took her back to a humiliating experience with a teacher, and subconscious mind goes, this is dangerous, get away, run away. You don't immediately run away. You just get that feeling of, oh, I don't want to be, almost like an anxiety feeling. Finish paying, feeling goes away, I go on with my day. Next time, of course, now I'm starting to get, that lady's starting to get nearer the till. The mind's going, you ignored me last time. This place is dangerous because of that thing. Again, not consciously knowing, I don't know what's going on, but now the feeling will start to get sooner, eventually gets to the door, eventually gets to the car park because the mind is screaming out to run away. So the aim of a hypnotist, like mentioned before, is to change those memories. To go, okay, let's change those memories. Let's not even necessarily remove them because they're part of what makes us, but let's go. It doesn't need to affect us anymore. There can be self-forgiveness come into this. There can even be forgiveness of another person. But it's about going, that stuff's happened. It's in the past. We don't need to hold on to it. Certainly the protection part of the mind doesn't need to overprotect. Might even thank it. Might go, well, thanks very much. You're doing your job. You've been overdoing it a bit, but thanks very much. Now let's get on and put some new stuff in. So actually, I'm perfectly safe at the till, or I'm perfectly safe on the golf course.
Yeah, there's so many areas to dive into there. I love this idea of, just self-compassion. I think a lot of the time there's a disconnect with our bodies because we're like, oh, why is there anxiety or why is this showing up for me? Well, it's a defense mechanism that you made when you were a kid a lot of the time. And I think that's pretty cool. Like you had the ability, even though you couldn't rationally think of or understand the situation that was happening, you still managed to create a defense. And I think that's pretty interesting. But then, another element to that was that you kind of, it kind of ties in with how manifestation works in a way, because if you're thinking the whole time that something's going to go wrong, as you were alluding to, it probably will. And you're like, oh, I knew it. I knew that would happen. And I think that's a great, you've actually broken down really well how manifestation works a lot of the time, because
Mm.
whatever you focus on will manifest into reality.
Yeah, whether it's an increased awareness, so you just see it or it happens, or whether it's the law of attraction and you're putting it out there to the universe, and everyone's got different beliefs around it. But yeah, I mean, it's things like it, I remember the first time I was ever able to get a company car, a brand new company car, and they said, "Here's a list of colours." I was like, "Wow, I've never had to do this before. This is amazing." And so I looked down the list of colours, and I looked at the colours and thought, "That's an unusual colour. You don't see one any like that. I'll have that one." Ordered it all, and then there's loads of them. They're everywhere because I wasn't tuned into them before. And now I'm thinking about that colour and imagining driving that car. And now suddenly, not everybody, but there are a lot of cars of that unusual colour that I didn't think was going to be there because I'm suddenly thinking about it. That's not the law of attraction because I'm not suddenly attracting lots of that colour of car. I'm just tuned into it more and being aware of it. So yeah, manifestation. How many people say, oh, just my luck. It's always my luck. It always happens to me. Those sorts of things. And yeah, sometimes you've got to stop. And I'll catch myself sometimes saying things, something like that. But it's being able to catch yourself. And I always say to people while I'm working with them, particularly when we first start working, is be kind to yourself. Because what the thing we're working on, yes, you'll get some changes, but you might still notice some of it. You might still notice some of that anxiety, and it might get hold of you before you have a chance to intervene with the techniques we talked about. But be kind to yourself, realize what's going on, because by doing that, at least then you'll be able to pause a moment and start to get back control rather than spiraling out of control with it. So yeah, kindness, gratitude comes into it a lot as well. And I'm working with people. I think it's really important when you do start to notice things, then celebrate that, even if it's a little tiny thing. Because one thing with hypnosis is, and it's someone described it. It was another hypnotist described it. It might have been in a podcast. They described it as the most underwhelming therapy, but with overwhelming results. Because we're changing the subconscious, we're changing the normality of things. I worked with a lady. She got a real serious fear of dogs and cats, phobia of dogs and cats. Not allowed to use the word phobia in the States because it's a medical thing, but a fear of dogs and cats. So to the point where she couldn't be near them, and she was about to go. She was going to get married in the country they were going to for the honeymoon. There was quite a few strays would wander around. She couldn't go to the parks. Lots of things that were really impacting her. Did the session, sat down for the second session. Is back in face-to-face session. Sat down for the second session, and the conversation's always, what's been happening? Oh, nothing. The weather's been really bad. I've not really had a chance to go out. Nobody's been in to work with a guide dog or anything, so I've not had to get someone else to deal with them. And I said, okay, so nothing's happened at all. And she said, oh, actually, no, I walked past somebody with a dog the other day in the subway under the street. And I said, oh, okay, would you have done that before? And she was like, no, I wouldn't actually. Normally, I'd have seen them coming towards me, turned around, gone and waited for them to come out, and then gone again. And that could have happened a couple of times. But her first reaction was nothing had changed. I said, okay, anything else? And she said, oh, yeah, I've stroked a cat. I was like, well, hang on a minute. And I said, how did that come about? And she said, well, I went to my friend's house and I was telling them about the hypnosis, and the kids just picked up the cat and put it on my knee, and I just sat stroking it. So I said, well, would you have done that before? She said, well, I've never been to the house before because they've got a cat. But it was just normal for her to start doing those things. So it also makes getting reviews sometimes quite hard as a hypnotist, because actually once they're done and gone, it's like, I've always been like this. That's how it feels. I've always been this new way, which is quite fascinating.
Yes, it's really fascinating, because again, if you're not searching, well, it ties up with the gratitude part, first of all, because if you don't take a moment to consciously reflect on all the things you're grateful for, then you won't notice magical moments like that. And you're still going to be programmed to think about the negatives or the lack of in your life. But then there's also the other element to that, which is you get to a point eventually where you forget where you once were. And I think that ties in with the whole man's growth journey, which is because once you're at the top of one mountain that you've had to climb, you're then at the bottom of another, and it just repeats itself over and over. So a good exercise I would do is just think, whenever that mountain does look so big, think, hang on, where were you a year ago? Where were you 2 years ago? And like you said, it just becomes your new normal, which is, again, it's important for us to reflect, I think, just on our journey so far, how far we've come.
Yeah, because the new normal is great, but it is just that normal then. It becomes just a normal thing. So you're right, just to be able to stop sometimes and look back and go, what have I done? Because again, we get so tangled up in what's happening. And people, I talk to people and I'll say, yeah, but don't forget you did that thing, and don't forget, look what you've done a year ago, and exactly that. And look, oh yeah, actually, I've come a long way. I've changed a lot of things, but we forget all those things because it's the new normal has taken over, like you say, or we just moved on from that. But you're absolutely right about those mountains, and I'll often talk with people about you breaking them down into smaller parts and all the rest of it. Because again, we look at sometimes a job, a task we've got to do, whatever it might be, even if it's personal, or business, or work, and it's that big mountain of things. And we just never get started as a result of it because it's just too big. But actually, we can do it an hour a day. And by doing it an hour a day, it'll be done in a couple of weeks, whereas we've been sat on it for 2 months waiting to get it started. So it's just changing that way. And often people, you'll say it to somebody and they'll go, oh, yeah, I know that already. I've read a book on it, but we forget all those things. So sometimes it's just that reminder. One of the things I love about hypnosis is you'll see that light bulb go off in people. They're sat there and they're relaxed, they've got their eyes closed, but you almost see them sort of move a little bit in their chair when you hit it. And it's not about telling them what to do, because in most cases we know what we should be doing. We know how we should be. We know how we should interact with that person at work, or we know that we could defuse the situation with our bosses and whatever the things might be. But in the moment when if we think about, I don't know, read the chimp paradox, but the chimp mind takes over. That the chimp mind is the subconscious. It's again that protection part of the mind takes over. I get an email from my boss, and just seeing my boss's name puts me into fight or flight, and the chimp mind is now running. Whereas actually, if I change the way that I think about that person, I can defuse it. And actually, a lot of the time, they're not causing trouble. They're not talking to me like that, but I'm reading that into it. I'm reading it into their body language. Or I'm reading it into their tone of their email. Again, it's that conditioning so it's just breaking that. I think when we very first started talking, it was you talked about patterns, and it's breaking that pattern of that person creates a certain behavior, or that job creates a certain behavior.
Mm. I'm fascinated with hypnosis because I imagine there must be a connection there, because I think sometimes when we encounter experiences in our life, sometimes it's our nervous system that reacts a certain way, right? And because it's like that's the trigger. And then I think with our mind, sometimes we can rationalize what we're seeing and project outwards. So yeah, that car beeped at me, or this person said this. And or sometimes I think it's been called as almost like bypassing sometimes, because I think thinking positively has a negative connotation to it, because there might be a
Mm.
disconnect between the mind and the body. So I'm intrigued to hear your sort of approach.
Yeah, it is good because it's interrupting that automatic response, because that's the side of it. So, we and there is that logical part of the mind that's going, but I am in this situation. I don't have any money, or I don't have a job. And things. I was talking to somebody the other day, somebody overseas, and she's stuck in this circle of things. This circle's going round and round. She's got no job. She's got no money. Um, you can't break out of that, and then of course the inner voice is just telling you that. So to be able to just sit with that person and go, oh, imagine yourself with a great job in the future. The conscious part of mind goes, what a load of rubbish, how can that ever do it? And that's the point where we've got to bypass that conscious mind, because that person's never going to be able to manifest anything. They're never going to be able to let their attention fall on that in that right direction until we get the conscious mind out of the way. Again, subconscious accepts whatever gets to it within reason, within your morals, within your boundaries. So you can't make somebody do something they don't want to do, but you can bypass that belief of this is my lot in life. I'm stuck in this thing. I'm not earning enough money to move house. I'm not earning enough money to get a better job or to get better prospects. Suddenly, then by changing that belief, again, you're back to visualization. And again, you see that light bulb moment of them going, actually, it does feel really good. It suddenly starts to feel achievable now. People talk about light at the end of the tunnel and those sorts of things. By being able to visualize what things should look like, what I want them to look like in a year's time, starts to change. And there's been measurements of brain activity, and they can see the memory centers lighting up. You get somebody in hypnosis or meditation, anything really, where you're in that subconscious part of the mind, mindfulness as well. And they say, okay, you visualize how you want that future to be. Ping, memory centers light up. They can't see what people are memorizing, of course. The scanners aren't that clever, but they can see that something's being written. So again, it's back to that. Now I'm checking in and going, but actually it's okay. Things are going to be okay. Things are going to work out right. And suddenly now I'm more open. Suddenly now I'm seeing job adverts that I didn't see previously, or I'm meeting somebody in the pub and they're going, actually, I know somebody who's looking for somebody who does what you do. Wow. Okay. But before I probably wasn't even going to the pub because I felt it can be those sorts of things. So yeah, again, it's that breaking that pattern, but it's got to be to get to the subconscious part of mind. And that's from a prospecting point of view, talking to potential clients, that's the hardest bit. Because to say to somebody, yeah, I'm just going to talk to you, I'm just going to get you to pretend things being okay and you'll be fine. They go, wow. And you want me to pay you money for this? And you're just going to talk to me? Say it's quite hard. But once they start, you get that light bulb moment and then they go, actually, I just feel much better. And by feeling much better, enjoyment starts to come back into life, and I am open, and I'll keep looking out the window. I don't know why, but I'm open to what's going off in the world.
Mm. Yeah, I see. And I suppose a big element of it, you alluded to it before. Sometimes you don't need to know why the trigger comes up sometimes. I think, like you said, I think it can be helpful and interesting, but I think there comes a point where you kind of know roughly what it's going to be about. And sometimes I think it's just cool to go, okay, you know what? I could spend a lot of time digging deep into this. And I know a lot of guys actually fear spending years in therapy. But I
Yeah.
think, if you just acknowledge it's there, don't try and fight it, then yeah, I think you can still move forwards. And that's why I quite like this approach of, yeah, like where am I going? What's the vision of who I want to become? And yeah, when situations do show up, can I just observe it objectively, not attaching the emotion to the thoughts, and then yeah, so carry myself into my life and feel safe enough to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the dwelling on the negative side of it. Well, yeah, we talked about the benefits of positive future pacing, positive visualization. Well, all you're doing if you do go into hypnosis and you take somebody back to a trigger, an initial sensitizing event, as it's called, actually all you're doing is refreshing that. Now all I'm doing, I'm going to finish that session and go, "God, I remember all that now. It's all come back to me." And often we make it worse as well. I had somebody who got one that sprung to mind as we were talking just then, somebody with a fear of driving on motorways, or on the bigger roads, the highways of life. And he'd had this thing. He said to me on the phone when he spoke to me, it was from a long time ago. There'd been an incident. He said, I know where it comes from. There was this incident a long time ago. And he was really intrigued. So what we actually did was we went back to the incident briefly, but looked at it as a bystander. And it turned out, I mean, the way he talked about it when he was telling me all about it, you think he'd been killed in an accident, which he obviously wasn't because he was sat there talking to me. But that was how he brought this across, and he recalled it. So we went back and looked at it, and he went, "Oh, actually, I drove really well. Actually, I didn't crash. I avoided a crash between two lorries. I managed to swerve and miss them both and avoid it, and I drove really well." But because he'd recalled it so many times, he's probably told that story at dinner parties. Oh, I remember this time I was on the motorway and this thing happened, and it was terrible. We do make things worse the more we think about them. And again, that protection part of the mind is going, well, let's look at all of that because we don't want that to happen again. So it'll replay it. And we do that as well in altercations we might have. I should have done it differently. And you start to believe a new reality. And he'd done exactly that. So just going back and having a really quick look at it and going, oh, wow, okay, now we can move forward. So there is sometimes value in just going and looking at it. Childhood things, sometimes you'll go back and say, okay, look at it with grown-up eyes. That thing that happened, let's look at it with grown-up eyes. And I'll go, actually, yeah, it wasn't that bad. But at the time as a child, it was bad to me, that thing that happened. So there is a little bit of benefit. But my mentor said to me, always tidy up, always leave people in the best possible place. So we don't spend a lot of time there because I want to finish that session with you very much going, this is where I'm going now. This is, I feel free from those blocks, those things. So yeah, there is value, but no, you don't want to be doing it. You're manifesting it again. You're changing your energy to that negativity. And you're quite right. You can sometimes and some therapies have great places in people's lives, but just my view is we don't need to do it. We don't need to spend weeks unraveling that thing in order to understand it, because you're just going to feel worse for weeks. And often people will give up at that stage as well. And they're even in an even worse place now because they've not been able to look forward. It's all been looking back.
Mm. Yeah, there's so many different layers to it, and I don't think there's one size fits all by any means.
No.
I think some people, again, I think therapy can be fantastic for many people. But then, as you suggested, if it is quite a lot to take in and you can't quite handle it, and then you haven't got that forward-looking vision, you can get stuck there, and perhaps you can identify with that trauma, let it define
Mm.
you,
Yeah.
perhaps. And so, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely see that, and I do believe a big reason why people stay depressed is because they're fixated on the past and they don't have that future vision. And so this is why a big part of the work I do is, yeah, still notice the patterns when they come up, but where do you want to go? Like, let's actually map out a vision and let's get super clear. What are your values? Who are you waking up next to? What country are you in? How are you doing? And then taking the steps to get there. And I think having that forward thinking approach is helpful, but all it really is just being in the present. And I my whole thing is, okay, are you living in alignment with who you want to become and who you want to
Yeah.
be? And that's essentially the journey there. Before we dive into the closing traditions, I'm keen to hear about hypnosis itself. What are your thoughts on affirmations in the mirror? And are there any tips you can give to our listeners to perhaps do a bit of hypnosis themselves, perhaps with audio while sleeping, for example, whatever methods
Mm.
you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think self hypnosis is really powerful. The best way to get self hypnosis is to work with a hypnotist and get them to embed it. So next time I do this thing, I can go into self hypnosis. But there is also a massive amount of work you can do yourself. Affirmations are brilliant. Being quite specific in affirmations, of course, as well. It's not just a case of, well, I'm great, I am great, I am great, because what your mind doesn't know what you're great at. So being quite specific. Great time to listen to them is as you're falling asleep. So you mentioned about listening to them when you're asleep, but as you're falling asleep is the time, because again, the measurements of brain activity show that we go into a state which is very similar to hypnosis. So conscious mind has fallen asleep effectively at that point where you're laid in bed and you can't really move. But you're still thinking, there's still some thought going on. It's a great time for repetitive learning, affirmations, making them quite rhythmic as well, I think is really important. One of the things I learned about affirmations, and I do use them from time to time, I don't use them as much now, but I did for quite a while as I was starting to get into all of this, is to make them quite rhythmic. So sort of one syllable per step, not necessarily seconds, that's too long, but so you're creating a da, 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 and then having that repeating as you're falling asleep, because your subconscious mind will listen potentially 30, 40 minutes. Depends from person to person, depends on your day. So some people go deep asleep really quickly, but some people have got quite a long time of listening. But you do stay listening for some time. And it does start to create those changes. And I remember it making changes for me doing particular work. And it's like just a little bit of effort to make something that you can have it playing on your phone and just have it repeating. So massive amount of value in those things. You've just got to overcome that conscious thought of, oh, I've got to go to bed, and so I'm just going to listen to these words that I've made, and that's going to. So you've got to. It's again, that's the conscious subconscious battle that goes on. But once you're doing it, you're starting to get more into the subconscious. You're letting yourself get into it, and just being able to slow things down and visualize, to be mindful, to be present and in the moment will make a big difference as well. Obviously, as a hypnotist, I'm going to talk about self hypnosis or even doing work one to one with somebody, because that's, of course, the most direct way of starting to get those changes and getting them quite quickly. But yeah, I'm a big fan of doing things yourself as well, as much as you're able to. And I make recordings for people. Sometimes I'll do little workshops and things, or I'll do a little session in there as well. And even joining in with those sorts of things, finding someone who you resonate with, someone who you feel that rapport we talk about is really important as well. Because I've had people come to me and they've gone, I've been working with somebody for 6 months, and they keep taking, one person I remember kept saying to me, they said to me, oh, they keep taking me out in a boat, but I don't like water. It's like, why are you still working with that person? That should be an immediate red flag of, I don't like water. Oh, it's the way I do it. Then no, I'm on my way. I go and work with somebody else. So yeah, finding that somebody that you've got some resonation with, finding out as well whether or not they are going to take you back. But yeah, a lot of work you can do yourself is really important, I say, because it's also really satisfying as well to be able to look, a few days later, to be able to think, actually, I do feel better. I do feel, again, back to that reflection, accepting it can be quite normal to suddenly those affirmations are making a change. But yeah, it's good then to be thankful and grateful to yourself and go, actually, that bit of work I did is starting to make a difference. So don't do too many things as well as at once, rather, with affirmations. So keeping it really simple, really specific, really simple, one thing at a time. Work with it for a while, then do your next thing, rather than going, here's 30 seconds of affirmations, because you're just not going to process it.
Yeah, that was my approach for a while. It was, I think it was about 4 minutes worth of
Yeah,
affirmations, and I'd recorded that and then played it on loop, and I'd go to sleep with that, which was a fun approach. But then there's like so many things, and then I'm
yeah.
remembering remembering all of it. So yeah, really, really fascinating, and I love that you mentioned presence and mindfulness too. And as you've alluded to, sometimes it's not about doing more. It's actually having the discipline to do less and actually just
Massive.
sit.
Yeah.
And so it's a part of my morning ritual now, just to sort of wake up, have that meditation time, and really just sit still. I think it removes the cobwebs for me. It's become such an integral part of my morning, and now it's having the discipline to during the day, when just finding that slot in there in the middle to just say, you know what, let's just have some mindfulness time now.
Mhm.
And that's
It's hard to
essentially
do.
the process.
It's hard to do because our mind is in our head. We're going, but I've got so much to do. I don't want to stop. I can't stop. I've got so much to do. But actually, you'll do it better if you stop for 10 minutes. But until you start doing it, you don't realize that. And that was probably a battle for me. I was starting out. It was just do. Got to keep doing. Can't stop. But yeah, you do by being able to stop. Just it doesn't take long. You can
Mm,
learn self-hypnosis, you can learn meditation, and you can do it really quickly. I'll teach people self-hypnosis they can do in 2 or 3 minutes, because if you work with somebody and learn how to do it in hypnosis, you can re-trigger it. You anchor it and go, right, when I sit, I close my eyes and I do this thing. I'm going to go back into that trance-like state, whatever it is to me, and I'm going to have some calm time there. It'll feel like hours, even though it's just a couple of minutes. And then I'll pop out with great clarity, maybe even some great ideas and great ways to get the rest of the day done. So yeah, but as I say, it's counterintuitive. We 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 feel, and I suppose it's conditioned into us again. It comes back right to the beginning of what we talked about: jobs and not working for other people. It's pounds per hour, dollars per hour thought. So, well, I'm not going to earn any money if I stop working. And it's that we feel as though we should work harder to get better at something. And back to golf. Well, golf is particularly one of those things. The more you practice, actually, you don't always get better. You've got to stop sometimes and get
mm.
into that enjoyment and get into that zone. Pushing often pushes the negatives into it as well.
Yes. Yeah, big time. And again, it's just fear. A lot of those actions are rooted in fear. I need to be
Mm.
doing more. I need to be practicing more. I need to be making more money. And I think if you can, again, ties in with your whole message, if you can just acknowledge in the moment when you're acting out of a place of fear or thinking a fearful thought, that was a bit of a tongue twister,
Yeah.
that. Thinking a fearful thought, then yeah, just having the awareness to to notice it. What we'll do, we'll move into the closing traditions. Usually, what we do, we have 2 questions which are routine and they're asked every episode. And
Okay.
then the final question is asked by a member of the Growth Voyage community. So if you're listening and you have a question, any question you'd like answered, then send it in and we'll get it featured in the next episode. The first question is quite simple, really. It's a song recommendation.
Oh, song recommendation. That is really interesting because I do listen to quite a lot of music, but I don't really listen to anything specific. Song recommendation. I probably can't recommend a specific song. I have a strange thing, and my partner thinks it's strange as well, but I quite often like listening to a sad song that will quite often make me cry, and I feel so much better afterwards. Whether it's the connection with the song, because often you'll have a song that's connected with a life event or something like that, or it can be the music itself. As I said, I was on a radio show the other day, and there was a guy there picked up a guitar and stopped playing and singing along to it, and it was like really, I don't know, it just did something to me. So I quite like. Sounds strange. It does sound strange, but I quite like songs that quite often make me feel sad. I don't know whether it's because that uplift afterwards, because you've let go. Again, it's probably about, a bit like being kind to yourself. But I can't think of a specific song that say it would be probably very personal for me anyway. But yeah, interesting. I can't necessarily recommend a specific song. That's interesting question, mate.
Okay, yeah. Well, if one comes to mind, then
Yeah.
you can shoot me a message, and we'll feature it. But it's a great point because sometimes, especially if we didn't give ourselves permission to feel when we were younger, it can be quite difficult. So just having a song to unlock that within you can help. And
Mm,
I've definitely seen that for myself.
yeah.
And it's actually my whole attitude to songs generally now. It's shifted because, and you're probably aware of this with hypnosis. I think the lyrics of the song, sometimes you don't actually realize what it's actually doing to your
Mm,
brain. And I'm starting to question a lot of these mainstream tracks that people are listening to. I mean, you go on TikTok. I don't use it as a consumer, but I go on it now and then for the podcast account. And you'll just see some 14, 15-year-old girls dancing to a song, and they're talking about really like just stuff which shouldn't really, in my opinion, be in there for
yeah.
in anyone's field, let alone kids. And I'm like, what's that? What is that doing to their brain over a long period of time listening to these songs? And it's,
Mm,
I don't think people realize just the effect that on the subconscious that can have.
mm. Yeah, yeah. It's well, if you change the subject side a bit, but it is. But the one of the beliefs from the hypnosis point of view is even if you don't get formal hypnosis, creating an emotion creates a response. So a song creating an emotion creates a response, which then of course means now I'm going into a form of hypnosis, back to affirmations. So now my subconscious is listening to the words more. It's taking those words in and it's bypassing the conscious. So yeah, potentially it's programming whatever emotions, behaviors, views. Yeah, all sorts of things could
Mm.
be going on in the background that we don't know about
Mm.
really.
Yeah, it could be a mass brainwashing scheme. Who knows? Go
Let's
deep
hope not.
into, yeah. You never know. um, yeah. The second question is a book recommendation.
Okay. If I had to, I mentioned about the chimp paradox. I think the chimp paradox is a really good read. I can't remember the guy's name, but the chimp paradox is pretty well known because it's from my point of view, it talks about the chimp mind as being that subconscious part of the mind, that instant reaction part of the mind. So it's about taming that, slowing that down long enough to get the conscious mind, because it's computer mind in the book, but the conscious mind to go. Actually, you don't need to react that way. So it's really useful for that. And another one I do use, I know you only asked for one, but another one I use a lot in what I do is atomic habits as well, which talks about habit stacking. And a great way to learn a new habit, which could be useful for people, is to link it to something you already do. So when I have my, every morning I have a cup of tea at 10 o'clock, let's say. I don't, I just have one when I can, but for, if somebody's got a regular thing to do, so while I'm waiting for it to cool down, I do some press ups or I do something. So it's a great, because the belief is it's 28 days, I've read somewhere 40 odd days to get a new habit in place. Um, by linking it to something you're already doing, you'll start to create a new habit much quicker because I'm doing that particular thing anyway. And within a few days, while your cup of tea's cooling, your mind's going, something else I'm going to do. Oh yeah, my press ups, or I'm going to make my phone calls, my prospecting calls, or whatever it might be. And you can link it to anything. You can link it to cleaning your teeth. You can link it to anything you're doing in the day. Or at any time. So I think Atomic Habits can be really useful. It's again, it's a really good book to have a read of.
And I suppose also on that note, a thought that just cropped up for me was a lot of the time I think we can struggle with habits that we're trying to get away from or not
Mm,
do as much. I think the best way to do that isn't actually by focusing on the habit itself, but building a new one to replace it. It kind of ties in with this very like forward thinking
yeah,
approach sometimes.
yeah,
Okay, you don't want that habit. Rather than focusing on the habit itself, can we build a new one? And that's what happened with me with drinking. I was never a big drinker, but when I did have nights out, it would be a lot.
yeah,
And for me, it would just it gradually lost its appeal because my new habits were going to jujitsu, waking up early, having cold showers, and you form a new identity which isn't aligned with that anymore. And yeah,
yeah,
similar in a way for smoking too. Instead of
mm,
focusing on how much I wanted a cigarette, it was more, okay, do I actually want this? And once you get rid of the illusion of wanting a cigarette and you realize that it's all a spell and illusion, it's essentially brainwashing your
yeah,
brain, then it's a lot easier to step away from it. So I think a cool way to did your habit, start building a new life. It's to focus on the life you want. And I think that's tied in
Yeah.
with your forward thinking approach too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just battling through that conscious mind. That back to very beginning when we started talking about imposter syndrome, that part of the mind that's going, but you can't do that. You're addicted to it, or it's crossing that, but it's getting rid of that belief, getting rid of the conscious mind out of the way, and just get excited about how you want things to be. Back to creating an emotion. The more you can get excited about the vision of the future, even if it's only tomorrow, even if it's going through tomorrow without having a cigarette, or it's going through tomorrow without a panic attack. How does that feel? It feels really exciting. Create that emotion, and the mind will go, actually, that feels really good. I want more of that. Rather than the worry about a panic attack or the feeling of the addiction, I'm more excited about the feeling of being without it.
Well, it reminds me of Joe Dispenza's work because when he
Oh,
talks about visualization, he talks a lot about actually feeling the sensation that
yeah,
that
exactly.
outcome would bring, and then you embody that. So it's
Yeah.
all very
Yeah, exactly
fascinating.
that. Yeah. Yeah, we've done some great work. Yeah, I've got quite a lot of Joe's stuff hanging about the place that I use from time to time. But yeah, yeah, it is. It's making it as real as you can make it.
Fantastic. We will put both of those books in the description, and
Hmm, thank you.
we move on into the final question, which is a guest question. And this one comes in from Caleb Thornbury, who asks, if your teenage self watched your life today, what would confuse him the most?
Oh, Caleb, that is a good question. About confused about my life. I think it's back to what we said earlier on. I was thinking we're conditioned to be working for other people. Conditioned, certainly, as a teenager, you had to have a job. You were supposed to have a job, and now I've not, and that would confuse them. I think the world in general would probably confuse my teenage self. I often joke about all the tech and stuff that we've got, and I say, if all this was around when I was younger, I'm not sure I'd ever met girls, because I'd have been too busy doing all this tech stuff and
Mm.
robotics and radio control stuff. So life in general, I think, would be very confusing to my teenage self if it suddenly plopped down. But me, yeah, it would be how does that work? How can you be making a living out of just talking to people and telling them to do stuff better, basically? Because
Mm.
it wouldn't compute back then.
Yeah, and it ties in with the whole of your journey, really, kind of going against the grain a bit, doing the thing that wasn't normal. Because we got
Mm.
to bear in mind now, okay, it's becoming a bit more normal, and you're seeing a lot of people with great skills sharing their skills with the world. But that wasn't always the case, and I think to do what you did back then and slowly sort of build into it, I think that's a testament to your just belief, even though the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt
It
crops up,
happens, yeah.
you've just made it happen. So I think it's a, real inspirational story, and really
Oh,
cool to
thank you.
share more about the
Thank you.
work you
Well,
do
it's been a
too.
pleasure to share it.
Where can people find you if they're interested in connecting with you, learning more about what you do?
Hmm. Social media, I'm at Steve Hypnosis, I think on most social media platforms, or if you Google Steve Woods Hypnotist, you should find me. There is another Steve Woods doing some hypnosis in Australia, so just be mindful of that. I'm not that one. I think he does more stage hypnosis. I like to reach out to him really and have a chat with him, but I think he does more stage work than anything else. So yeah, Googling Steve Woods Hypnotist, it will probably take you to my golf website. I'm busy building another couple of websites at the moment, but at the minute, as we're recording this, I'll probably take to the golf one. In the future, if you're listening to this, I'll probably take you to a different one, but that's a great way to find me. And all the contact details are floating around on the internet.
Fantastic. We'll put all of these in the description. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me along. It's been a pleasure.